I'm not just a little, you know, just one nobody human being knocked around by whatever politicians want to do or whatever other people want to do. I can actually affect my life and other people's lives. And it started for me when I was 20 years old, when I, out of frustration, I had a tariff item put on the books, on the government books, a federal tariff item. Guitar makers and instrument makers were bringing in materials that weren't available in Canada, but high duties were put on them. And I got so frustrated clearing stuff through customs that I started, you know, asking questions and climbing my way to the top, basically saying, what industry is this protecting? Nobody makes this here. You know, why is there 15% duty on this stuff? You know, it's crazy. And I got, the higher I got, until I got to the federal government level, people got nicer and nicer until finally at the top level they said, oh, you're right, that makes sense. Here's what we'd like you to do. You tell us how many people use this stuff and what you do with it, and we'll get an order in council. We'll change it. So I did. It took a while, but I got people together, you know, and I gave them the stats, and 2 years later, all these things that we used to brought in came in duty-free. This is before free trade. I still remember it, 59825-1, which is what it was called at the time. And then it got expanded to include mandolin and banjo parts and all this stuff. And that was the first time, I was 20 years old, and I realized you can do things. You don't have to just sit back and take it. Oh, I love a righteous battle. I really do, you know? Maybe if I was a lawyer, if I could stand the minutiae of being a lawyer, I would love to be a courtroom lawyer, you know, or something like that, to fight, you know. And I, you know, there's the belief in the importance of social justice and those kinds of causes, and that you should pay attention to the world you're in. And I feel this viscerally, that a purpose of being is to leave the world a better place than you found it. And I think about that in a conscious way most days. It's not a vague concept. I really think about it. And so I've chosen my world, which is craft, music, you know, and support that community and play a role in helping other people's lives is a way you can do, in addition to just giving to charity or something that's at a remove. But this one takes my time, it takes my money, it takes my effort, but the pleasures of participating in this community far outweigh, at the same time as it satisfies something that I've decided for myself is my goal in life, is literally to leave the world a better place than I found it. Persistence, staying the course, is what will accomplish things. And it's not just the music and craft world. Think of how many filmmakers tell you that it took 8 years to get this script into production. But because they believed in it, now maybe they did some other things in the interim to pay the bills, but they were always working on trying to get people interested in that script, invest in it, get the actors on side, put all the pieces together to make it happen. And then finally, you know, 10 years after their initial idea, it's a film that we see. If it wasn't for persistence, they'd give up, and we wouldn't have some of the great art we do have, you know. And if you're confident in your vision, whatever it might be, you just follow through. And I think that's the sweat of follow through separates a lot of people. Starting Borealis, you know, I did another record of my own music, and I had been on Stan Rogers' label, and when he died, of course, there was no label, really. His own music is being kept there by his wife, but expanding it as he was doing just stopped. So I had nobody who was going to indulge me and put the music out for somebody who doesn't play full time. And I was going to US labels, and they said, well, we know your music, we like it. If you want to wait 2 years, maybe we could release it, but why don't you go to somebody in Canada? There was nobody. Not solidly in the folk world at the time. So I thought, well, wait a minute. Why don't I get some of my friends together, and instead of me taking $5,000 from my line of credit and producing this my record, Why don't a bunch of us take $5 grand and throw it in the pot and start something bigger? And that's how it began. The Folk Awards, it was seeing a need where the Junos just weren't answering our community. The Junos' roots and traditional categories had too much variety in them. Apples and bananas were competing against each other, and it made no sense. Bruce Coburn's new record against a traditional Quebecois band. They're equally deserving. It makes no sense that they're fighting each other for the same category. So for a while, it felt like I was epoxy. I was filling gaps, There was a gap of a need here. Well, let's just do it. This makes no sense. It's sometimes out of frustration. But again, the reason I could even have that thought is a habit of thought that you can accomplish things.